Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Chloe Feng. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. 29 people charged with subversion are set to plead guilty in the city's biggest national security law case. The government is trying to track down 8 Hongkongers missing in Myanmar after being lured there on false job offers. And John Lee has been spared any penalty for not submitting election-related documents on time. The court has lifted a reporting ban on committal proceedings in the city's largest national security case. Following the ruling, it was learned that most of the defendants plan to plead guilty. Janice Low reports.
There's been a lack of information since pretrial proceedings started over a year ago in the case of 47 pan-Democrats charged under the national security law with conspiracy to commit subversion. They were accused of organizing or taking part in an unofficial primary poll for the Legislative Council elections 2 years ago. 34 are behind bars, while 13 were granted bail. A number of them had tried unsuccessfully several times to have a reporting ban on committal proceedings lifted. But today, West Kowloon Principal Magistrate Peter Law finally accepted an application from former journalists Gwyneth Ho, Tiffany Yuen, Ventus Lau, and Gordon Ng. This came 2 weeks after High Court Judge Alex Lee ended the reporting gag on committal proceedings in a separate national security case involving the now disbanded Hong Kong Alliance. It's now learned that 29 of the defendants in the primary polls case had stated in previous court appearances that they plan to plead guilty. They include former Hong Kong University law lecturer Benny Tai, former student leader Joshua Wong, protest organizer Jimmy Sham, and former lawmakers Wu Chi-wai and Claudia Mo. Those pleading guilty will appear in court for about an hour in groups of at least 2 from next month until November. The 18 other defendants reportedly plan to plead not guilty. They include former legislators Leung Kwok Hong and Helena Wong. Their case will be heard in the High Court at an unspecified date. Janice Low, HKIBC.
The government is trying to locate 8 Hongkongers missing in Myanmar after being attracted by lucrative job offers. But their exact location remains a mystery. Missy Mock reports.
There has been a spate of reports recently of Hongkongers lured to Southeast Asia with lucrative job offers, only to end up forced to do illegal work. SAR authorities have launched a search for 8 Hongkongers missing in Myanmar after their anxious families contacted police.
We haven't been able to identify the exact location. However, our immigration officers are trying their utmost and reach out to the Chinese embassy and the local CGs and to explore all the means and avenues and try to secure their safe return. And this will be our top priority.
The Security Bureau has warned Hongkongers of employment fraud after people were lured to countries such as Thailand, Myanmar, Cambodia, and Laos, where they were detained and forced to do dangerous and illegal work. Since January this year, there were 20 cases of people seeking help. Bal Chan from the Police Liaison Bureau said people who were tricked into going overseas were forced by criminal syndicates to operate online scams. But victims were able to use their phones and contact their family and friends for help. Apart from the 8 Hongkongers in Myanmar, 12 others who were lured overseas on false pretenses are now safe. The Security Bureau is leading a task force which includes police and immigration officers to look into employment fraud in Southeast Asia. Beijing's Foreign Ministry office in the SAR said it will help to locate the missing Hongkongers and warned people to avoid some parts of Myanmar. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
A former child carer has been jailed for 6.5 months for abuse. Chen Wang-yin had worked in the children's residential home, which was at the center of a child abuse scandal last year. The 30-year-old had earlier pleaded guilty to ill treatment or neglect of a child. She was the third person jailed in the case. Trials are still underway for 31 of her former colleagues at the Montauk residential home, which was managed by the Society for the Protection of Children. Chief Executive Zhang Li has been exempted from penalties for not submitting required documents on time after publishing an online notice. The High Court said Li did not intentionally ignore election logs. Isaac Lee reports.
Inadvertence was the sole reason why John Lee did not submit required documents on time after publishing election-related notices, according to High Court Judge Queenie Ao-yeung. In April, when Lee was running for the city's top job, he published on his Facebook page 3 promotional posts in which table tennis coach Li Qing, lawmaker Nelson Lam, and artist Alex Fong endorsed him. But Lee did not upload the consent form signed by the three onto the designated platforms within a day after the notices were released. That was in breach of the Electoral Procedure Regulation. Violators could face 6 months in jail and a fine of $1,500. When Lee's campaign office was alerted by media inquiries, it was too late. He petitioned the High Court for a waiver of the possible penalties, blaming a tight time frame and the lack of communication among his team. In a written verdict, Judge Ao-yeung said Lee responded promptly after realizing the problem. She described the 2 to 3 day delay as a relatively short one. Lee did not act in bad faith or gain a special advantage, added Ao-yeung. She granted the exemption sought by Lee, who agreed to bear the legal cost of just under $64,300. Isaac Lee, HKIBC.
The number of daily COVID cases in Hong Kong has surpassed 6,000 to hit a 5-month high. Of today's 6,054 cases, 243 were imported. 5 patients aged 50 to 92 years were the latest fatalities. Another 265 people were admitted to hospital, taking the total to 1,886. 9 are in intensive care. The hospital authority has tightened discharge requirements for the elderly from care homes to minimize the risk of infection.
Starting from the 9th of July, when the confirmed patients who are ready to be discharged, our clinical team will do the clinical assessment to make sure that their conditions are fit. And if they fulfill the criteria, then we will arrange a PCR test for them. If the CT value is more than 30, that means they are not infectious. That's when we will discharge the patient back to the elderly home.
At least 16 people have been killed and 36 are missing after flash floods hit Qinghai province. Sudden rainstorms in Datong County triggered landslides, which diverted a river and flooded populated areas. Roads were cut off by floods, which inundated farmland, while fallen trees hampered rescue efforts. Officials in the western province raised the alarm level to its 2nd highest. Members of the South Korean religious group, the Unification Church, have protested against what they perceive as negative coverage by the Japanese media. This followed the assassination of former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Wina Wang reports.
With matching visors and placards, members of the controversial Unification Church marched through the streets of the South Korean capital, Seoul. Members of the Japanese Family Federation are living in extreme anxiety and fear, said this follower, referring to the Japanese branch of the church. She said they were the victims of religious and human rights oppression. Most of the protesters are Japanese women who settled in South Korea after marrying Korean spouses. They are up in arms against recent Japanese media coverage about their group, ever since the man who assassinated former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe blamed his family's troubles on the church. They say the reports are biased and driven by anti-unification church pundits, groundlessly blaming the group for Abe's death. With branches reaching as far as the United States, the New Age religious group has had a long history of controversy. Its followers, sometimes called Moonies, believe their late founder Moon Sung-myung is the Messiah, and were known for their mass weddings and involvement with business and politics. Wenna Wang, HKIBC.
At least 21 people have been killed in a bomb explosion which rocked a mosque in the Afghan capital, Kabul. Another 33 people were injured when the blast occurred during evening prayers yesterday. There was no immediate claim of responsibility, but the explosion came after the terrorist group Islamic State killed a pro-Taliban cleric in a suicide bombing last week. HSBC and Standard Chartered have raised interest rates on new mortgages linked to the Hong Kong interbank offered rate. Analysts say the move will add more pressure on new home buyers. The pressure and pain of rising interest rates are finally being reflected with a 25 basis point increase by HSBC and Standard Chartered on new mortgages linked to the Hong Kong interbank offered rate, or HIBOR. HSBC adjusted its cap from P or prime minus 2.5% to P minus 2.25% starting today. The lender is also launching a one-year fixed-rate mortgage plan for new customers. Standard Chartered's HIBOR mortgage cap will be adjusted from P minus 2.7% to P minus 2.5% from next Wednesday. Local experts said the move will add more pressure on the local residential property market.
This will be quite significantly affecting the new home buyers because they will be applicable for this ceiling. There will be quite substantial increment for the loan side as well as the interest payment. Therefore, the volume will be slightly adjusted downwards given this ceiling adjustment.
Joan expects other banks to follow suit. She predicted that lenders could also raise their prime lending rates in coming months, but the property market could remain resilient because of robust demand. Now let's take a look at the markets. The Hang Seng Index closed down 158 points. Top 10 active stocks, Tencent gained $9.40, Alibaba lost $2.10, Meituan gained $1.10. AIA lost 65 cents, Wuxi Bio gained $1.95. Forex trading against Hong Kong dollar, the euro is at 7.98, British pound at 9.46, Australian dollar at 5.46. Moving on to the UK market, the London FTSE is currently up 4 points. On to the weather now. Mainly cloudy with occasional showers and a few thunderstorms tomorrow. Temperatures will range between 26 and 30 degrees. The rain may ease on Sunday when sunny intervals return. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. That's our main news for Thursday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Chloe Feng. Good evening.